Hello.
Hi, Serene.
Good morning. Hi. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Serene. I'm the host of the Serene View. For those of you who are joining us for the first time. And today, for the last couple of weeks, we are talking about constructive arguments. Now, if you're wondering, constructive and arguments don't go together. Well, what I'm trying to do is very simple, which is I'm trying to bring all the different viewpoints into social media and trying to encourage healthy disagreement. And today we have someone else who is online with me, Colin, who is also on a crusade. In fact, he's on a crusade that I dearly wish he will succeed at. And I think most of you will wish he succeeded. So Colin is on a crusade to decrapify work. Now, I will let Colin introduce himself a little bit. Colin, would you like to just say a few words?
Yeah, hi, Serene. Hi, everybody. I'm Colin. I live in London, in the UK, and I had a 20-plus year career in corporate, which was a bit of a mixed bag. So half of it was brilliant and half of it was terrible. And I've been doing some other things since then, but I couldn't get away from this fact that why was half it terrible, and it didn't need to be. It didn't seem very productive. And my conclusion is it's just, like, unnecessary. And I've also been sort of found, that people have increasingly found work more and more tedious and draining and stressful. And we really need to stop this because it's going in the wrong direction.
All right. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to decrapify work, or rather that we need to decrapify work. And actually, the first time I saw Colin, I was like, wow, that is the tagline, right? The tagline of the century. We need to decrapify. We should decrapify work. So let's start with a couple of definitions. What is decrapify, basically?
Well, that's sort of it's whatever you want it to be, really. I mean, it's one of those, I haven't really deeply explained it because most people seem to just, at some sort of visceral level, get it. It's like, yeah, we just need to make it better, don't we? I mean, why should work be so terrible? And why is it so terrible? And why do we put up with it? So, yeah, broadly speaking, this came about from a sort of rumination on my corporate career, and I came up with this sort of idea that what we've been seeing was a process of crapification of work that had been going on, over my career. And it's still happening today, and it's a sort of a conflux of different things. So it's not a deliberate, the Illuminati haven't decided that everybody's got to be, downtrodden serfs and they're going to make life terrible for us. It's just we've allowed a number of different things to come together and bear down on people to the point where, work is just really crap for a lot of people, and we see that in, some of the things you've pointed out in your introductory post for this.
I'm going to ask, right? I mean, I'm going to ask those who are online with us today. Do you agree that work is crap, right? I mean, just put a simple yes or no, right? Obviously, if you want to tell us more about how crap your work is, feel free. But they'll just put a simple yes if you think that work really is crap, or no if you think work is not crap for you. And let us know whether it's true that for most people, we kind of feel work is crap. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, did we get? Oh, okay. So we have Yuri. This is why you need to work. What is crap? The place, the people, the what, and what makes it crap? Why do you need to work in the first place? I don't know about you, Yuri, but I mostly work for the money. Yes. The question is too simple. He thinks the question is too simple. Okay, all right. So But I mean, do you find your work to be crap? I mean, do you find work in general to be crap, Yuri? What do you think? The people, the place, the what makes it crap? I actually kind of agree. I know. I mean, what makes work so crap? It's a great question.
It's not. I mean, it's not all crap. So, in my own personal experience, I had a job that I really enjoyed, but the environment I worked in was terrible. So, it's possible to enjoy part. I mean, if you look at your job generally, there's always bits that are like really tedious and dull and painful to do. And as we've seen over the last 18 months, people have realised actually all that commuting was pretty tedious and draining. It's just these things have just got worse and worse. I mean, in my experience, over I started work an awful long time ago. There was just a lot less of that stuff. Work was much more enjoyable, much more sociable. The commute was much easier. It was.
Are you sure? I've come back online to disagree with you. I mean, you are in Britain, the land of the chimney sweepers, and quite a few other jobs that are equally unsavory. I understand that when they first started having machinery at factories, people used to lose arms and fingers regularly. Are you sure work used to be less crappy? Colin, this is a rose-tinted glasses that we are looking at.
I guess I'm sort of really speaking about, office work, on what we would now call knowledge-based work. Because I actually think in some of those, like physical occupations, things have actually got better. And I had a great uncle of mine who worked in a foundry in Nottingham, and he didn't make it to draw his pension because it's such a brutal work environment. He passed away before then. So those types of jobs are actually better. But even things like like people working in the sort of shop jobs that you used to do as a student in the holidays, like working in shops and stuff like that, those have become much more onerous than they used to be. There's a lot less opportunity for fun. You get paid less. You're asked to do more. There's lots of bureaucracy, and you have to behave in certain ways, and it's much more prescriptive about how you are. And we see that in the office as well. In the office, you have to conform. You have to follow all the processes. You don't have much opportunity to figure things out for yourself. You don't have much autonomy, and the pressure is relentless.
I mean, Yuri has a couple of comments about that, actually. He says that he runs his own business, he loves it, and to him, work is energy spent that hopefully pays off. He says he needs to make money, but work is only one way that he makes money. And I think I don't know, I mean, to me, he hit it on the head, right? We've always thought, we got to go to work because we got to make money. But honestly, work isn't the only way to make money. And like what he says, maybe it's time for us to redefine work. I mean, work is energy we spend on something. And that could be, I mean, women are known for, doing a lot of unpaid work around the house.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I mean, the different definition of work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the work that we do, on our in the rest of our life. I mean, we as women do a lot of work around the home. I do quite a lot of DIY and stuff like that, and that sort of stuff. Looking after the kids, that's all work of some sort. But I was with Decrapify Work, I'm really talking about the office job primarily. And that's the challenge is great for Yuri that he runs his own business, but that's not for everybody. A lot of people need to be working in an organization to really fulfill their talents, to be happy. That it's the whole social aspect and connection to others, belonging and being part of something else. And also when you work in an organization, when you do things, you've got a lot more leverage if you're effective. So I think that's one of the issues, because one of the sort of pushbacks that people give. If people say, "I really hate my job," then we'll go and start your own business. Well, that's just not an option for lots of people because they're not going to thrive doing that. It's just not right for their personality. They don't have the skill sets. They don't have the sort of safety net cushion that they would need to do that.
But I guess for to Yuri's point, I'm really thinking more, is this a mindset issue, right? Like that way that we thought about it. I think I shared with you this story, but I'll share it anyway. When my kid was very young, so I fall into the habit of going, okay, I've got to go to work. Don't just tell me I've got to work. So there was one day where he took a box and he put it on the table to imitate a computer, I think. And he was just sitting in front of the box sighing. This was when he was 3, all right? And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm going to work. And to him, work is just this onerous, terrible thing, And I thought, oh, wow, I have to stop. And just like Yuri, I run my own business. I control my time. I pick the work that I like to do. I won't say that I enjoy every aspect of the work, but I do find my work to be meaningful and to be enjoyable, mostly. And the thing is, but in my mind, I have been equating work with, terrible things and subconsciously conveying that to the kid. And I actually had to sit down and go, no, my work is not that bad, and explain all the stuff that I've just explained to you. So I mean, to Yuri's point, really, is it a mindset thing? Is work really that bad? Or he says we've narrowed it down from work to office jobs, so much more manageable. But even office job, is office job that bad? I mean, you get aircon, you get to have a seat, you're not in danger of dying anytime soon. You're not a chimney sweep in the UK. That's what I will say, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think when I entered the workplace, working in an office was, it was safe. It was a pleasant place to work generally. I'm not sure that's the case these days. We know that workloads have increased enormously. The pressure to do everything's been put into a process. You're measured. You've got to hit your targets all the time. You've got these things stuck in your pocket, so you're expected to be available 24 hours a day to respond to stuff. And we know that stress levels are going through the roof. So burnout is now, a recognised medical condition. We know that in Jeffrey Pfeffer's book, Dying for a Paycheck, he details to some lengths how work is actually killing people. It's causing high levels of cardiovascular disease and heart attacks and stuff like that. So I think the work is, the office is now quite a dangerous place for some people.
No, but I was going to say, what are we comparing it to, right?
All right, I'm serious. People are being killed by going to work.
Right. But I guess in the sense is, what are we comparing it to, right? So when you when you were a young lad and you first graduated, you were comparing your office job with the foundry job that your friend had, right? And if, I'm presuming there's a couple of decades ago. And at that time, if you compared, if those are your choices, right? Do I go and work in a foundry? Do I work in a manufacturing firm? Or do I go to the office? And obviously the office looks like a wonderful choice. But right now, I think most of us in developed countries are working in office. It's a choice between office A or office B or office C, right? And so then we have more requirements for our, we are now talking about stuff we didn't talk about before, like mental health. I would argue that work has always been stressful. I mean, if I was a serf in medieval Europe, I would be having a very stressful job.
But I don't think I think the levels of stress are much, much higher these days. I mean, so you're very kind to say it's a couple of decades ago, but it's probably a bit further back than that. Stress was not something people talked about. It was. I haven't done the Google search, but I'm pretty sure that if you go and look at the use of stress, I think it actually picks up in the sort of mid-60s, but it doesn't really take off in the 80s.
But at that time, we didn't know it was a condition we could have. to quote a famous TED talk. I mean, it wasn't well defined. We weren't able to have stress, until somebody.
I agree with that to some degree, but I don't think people actually were stressed to the same degree, and you didn't have, people just weren't under the pressure they're under today. There's a thing today called workplace isolation, where somebody works in an office surrounded by other people and doesn't talk to anybody and has no human connection with other people, right? So that's a symptom of a very unhealthy workplace. The levels of illness that people are encountering are symptoms of very unhealthy workplaces. So, we know that for a lot of people, work is not a safe space. It's physically safe, but it's not psychologically safe. And that's why people put on a front and conform and fit in and effectively subsume their personality to make sure that they're safe. So because of that,
has it been safe before? Has it? I mean, you worked, before when things were probably not the way it is now. Was it ever saved? Because I think there's a big change from hierarchical command and control leadership towards more inclusive, more collaborative leadership styles. I mean, around the world, it used to be that I said it and you obeyed, or you were booted out. But I think we're moving away from that over the last few decades, certainly. So when you say that it's psychologically safe, is it more psychologically safe?
Is it
recommendation of Yuri? Everything is okay. I will check out that book on how we see stress and hardship.
I think I haven't got that one. I've got his previous book.
Okay, I don't know, but I feel that at least over here, I mean, it used to be, right? I mean, parenting was the same way, right? When my parents were much more liberal than their parents was literally like, just shut up and do as I say, right? My parents are a little bit more collaborative. They would actually ask our opinion. Obviously, they'll make the final decision. And now when it comes to me, I kind of feel that, okay, I should sit down and we should have a family discussion and we should take their opinions into account. And I see that as well in the office, right? There used to be a lot more hierarchical command and control. So when you say that, we are less psychologically safe, that's less compared to where, to what?
Well, because the expectation is different. Okay, so when it was a command and control environment and very hierarchical, you weren't expected to bring your whole self to work. For example, you weren't expected to show that to show that you engaged in the culture and bought into the values and all this sort of stuff. So it was very separate. It was in a separate container. You went to work. It was compartmentalized and to some degree transactional. And and you had that separation. So when you're out of work, you could just be yourself and be disengaged from work. Literally, that's not the case these days. These days, everything's sort of bleeding in, and they don't just want you to turn up and do your job. They want you to, sing the company song and carry the value card around with you. And so there's this whole performative side required of you to show that you're engaging, which is actually very can be very psychologically draining for people, and people also know that for all this talk about we're collaborative and we're inclusive and all that, people know a lot of that is just bullshit. They know it's greenwashing and well washing and all this sort of stuff. So I don't think it is. I think it is a more psychologically dangerous place for people, and the evidence would seem to suggest that from the fact that people are suffering from much higher levels of stress.
No, but I guess that's also kind of what I was thinking of, right? Like the fact that you said, people are more stressed out because we're trying to engage them, right? So it's also this whole thing, right? I mean, are we going, organizations are trying to engage their staff a little bit more, trying to be a little bit more, collaborative or consultative with their staff. And as a result, you're saying it's actually making them more stressed out, not less stressed out.
Well, I think
that in the past, the command and control was actually better for people.
Well, I suppose at least with command and control, you sort of knew where you were. You knew you were, just a cog to be, or a pawn to be ordered around. Whereas now we have this much more blurred role, and the hierarchy hasn't really gone. The power dynamics haven't really changed. They've just become hidden. And that's what makes it difficult for people. So, you shared the article by David Graeber about bullshit jobs. And the point he's making in that really is that this is actually very damaging to people because they know they're doing a bullshit job and they're getting really well rewarded for it. So they don't feel they should be complaining, but they're fundamentally unfulfilled. And so they suffer this dissonance. And I think we're seeing more of that, with this, you're expected to be part of, to belong and show that you are part of the culture, but it's all a sham, really. It's not really, you're encouraged to bring your whole self to work, but you're not going to do that because it's not safe to do that because you're getting ripped to shreds by people. So, that's what's made it a more dangerous place, I think, for people.
Okay. I was going to hear a couple of comments from Yuri. He's going to go off. He says, it says that the book is very insightful and it gives an explanation of why we are struggling. We should be having it better, which is true. Okay, so he's got to go. Bye, Yuri. Thanks so much for coming by. I appreciate it. And it is true, right? Like, why should we be struggling when really we should be having it better? We should.
Well, yeah, that was... my personal experience was that this is mostly unnecessary and it's actually counterproductive. So the way that organizations are working at the moment is actually stopping the stuff that they say they want. So they say they want, creativity and innovation, and yet people don't actually feel safe speaking up and contributing their ideas. And they say they want agility, but the whole thing is, struggling with bureaucracy because the power still sits at the top. The power structures may have become softer, but the power still sits at the top. And I think that's the big shift that we need to see.
So you actually think that the whole problem is we are becoming more hypocritical? It's like, we now promise you a safer, nicer environment, but actually it's not really true. We dress it up, as we are not like telling you off now, but actually we dress it up. But the truth is that it's still like that. It's still command and control.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of messaging about what the company, what the organization is like, and what, there's a lot of talk about values and the lived reality is different. And I think that's true in a lot of places. So I think there needs to be, a more honest conversation. I guess I'm encouraging people to identify those gaps and to call them out in some way. Maybe in the way that, our friend Dr. Richard Clayton would call, the ironist. It's the person who points out these gaps with humour and satire.
I don't know about the humor bit. I guess we can try to point it out, but I don't know about the humor bit. But actually, earlier on, you were talking about, all these bullshit jobs. Do you agree with it? Because when I read that book, I was like, this is one concept that I had never thought of. But after that, I thought, I really agree with it. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, Bullshit Job is this book by David Graeber. I believe the word is.
Yeah.
And I'll share it out now so that people can. Okay, so we're not affiliated with Amazon, but I just share it so you can see what it is, and you will then be able to buy one if you wanted to. It's a wonderful book. It talks about how there are tons of jobs out there, which are literally, they should not exist, put it that way. And people are making up these jobs and actually rewarding people quite well for them, in order to, keep, I guess, I don't know, keep certain agendas going that has got nothing to do with work and productivity.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like you say about things have changed. We don't have command and control and hierarchies, but a lot of these jobs are just about plain old-fashioned empire building. So someone will create all sorts of departments underneath them, so they've got a load of people, because that makes them feel important. That means they can justify a bigger salary, and those jobs are not actually necessary. So, I mean, one of the things he particularly has a go at are corporate lawyers. And if you've ever been involved in doing a negotiation with another company, it all goes great until you give it over to the lawyers, and then 20 lawyers on each side make a mountain out of a molehill, in order to justify, justify their jobs, I suppose. And they fundamentally know that all this batting and fall back, this sort of batting backwards and forwards is not fruitful. Because no one does the risk evaluation in the first place and says, well, if they did welch on this contract, what's it going to cost us? It's probably less than getting the contract drawn up in the first place. We don't, because it has to go. And this is the problem with, we've had processes brought in, so everything has to go through a process, and no one says, is it worth doing this?
I wanted to tell you this. So this is Tiffany. I've just went to check out who it was. It's Tiffany Zamot. And basically, that's exactly what she said, right? She says, if organizations are collections of people, why are they vilified? And actually, I think, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? To me, it's the processes that unnecessarily complicate life, right? So for example, if I decide to do business with Colin, we'll decide what we want to do and shake on it, and then we'll probably get started. But if my organization wants to do business with Colin's organization, that's a totally different thing. We need 20 lawyers, right? That's what I heard. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, this is what Tiffany is asking us.
I don't think organizations are collections of people. I think organizations are vessels in which there are a number of people, but the people don't actually have much say about how that vessel, is built. And so the problem is, a lot of it is with the way that we're structured in organizations. I completely agree with that. And this, we talked about processes and measurement, and also I would say this obsessive focus on profitability and on efficiency rather than people and effectiveness. But if you look at how organizations work and what people get rewarded for, that's what drives the behaviors. And unfortunately today, what gets rewarded are somewhat pathological behaviors.
But actually, I will say this though, that is, okay, so we say that it drives shareholder value, right? I mean, that organizations are set up to drive shareholder value. And I think one of the arguments David Garber makes, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. I apologize, David Garber, for pronouncing his name badly.
Unfortunately, he's passed away, so he won't.
Oh, so you won't complain about it? Yes, great. I can pronounce it whatever I want. No, but please don't come back and visit me. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. But anyway, I was going to say that one of the points he makes in his book is quite simply this, right? That a lot of work is set up for the people who are paying for it, and what the 1% of society thinks to be very important, and therefore that they're willing to pay for, may not equate to what the rest of the 99% or 99.9% needs. So things like, for example, lobbyists you mentioned corporate lawyer. So these are not things that are needed by the average Joe like you and me, but for the top 0.1% of people, they're very important, and therefore they get paid a lot to do stuff that really doesn't benefit anyone else. And I think organizations are exactly like that, right? If you are set up for the shareholders' benefit, then what the shareholders want may not equate to, what's good for humanity or the planet, or actually even for the rest of the people in the organization.
Yeah, I mean so shareholder primacy was something that came about in the late 70s. Before that, I mean, when back in the UK after the Second World War, organisations were quite paternalistic and saw their role as being the welfare of the people that work for them. And UK corporations were known for retaining staff during downturns. So even back then, the US model was, to get rid of people. In the UK, they'd hang on to people because they had this idea of giving people the opportunity of the job for life in an organisation, and that's why I think that the environment that people worked in was much more pleasant. And of course, all that got thrown out the window in the 70s and the 80s. But
actually, I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's the power of beautification brought about by nostalgia. Because I actually thought that in that period of time, there was a lot of kind of old boys club. There was a lot of exactly what you say, paternalistic, right? I know better than you do, and therefore I will tell you how to do your job. And if you're not in the, I don't know, if you don't come from Eton or some of the other, great boarding schools, then I'm so sorry, you'll never be able to climb up the echelons of management. And there's a lot of that kind of almost systemic discrimination going on.
Oh yeah, I'm not advocating going back to then, but Yeah,
no, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you come from like Eton and Oxford or something like that. But no. I'm not sure whether that is.
No, I come from Brooklyn, so that's
okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize you come from Brooklyn. But what I'm trying to say is really that, huh? Sorry.
Romford. It's a very small town out. It's on the edge of London. So.
Oh, okay. Right.
It's not very salubrious. It's not very salubrious.
Yes. No, but what I was going to say is that I thought that period of time was a lot more discriminatory, a lot more structured, and a lot more. I mean, Tiffany was asking us about creating a different set of results, right? I actually think at that time they were trying to create a different set of results.
Yes.
Not so much for shareholders, but for whoever were the top bits of people in organizations.
Well, I think so. Organizations certainly in the sort of 50s and early 60s saw them, and this is true. I know it's true in the UK. It's also true in the US that they would also see that they had a role in their community and a role in society and a contribution to make to the country. So they had a much more broader set of objectives, and then this all got boiled down to just going to make profit for the shareholders and screw the people. And that's we still see that. That's still pretty much today. I mean, although the US corporations, the organisation, the Round Table, isn't it? Business Round Table, that's it. Said about 2 years ago that they were going to have a broader set of objectives. So shareholder primacy just became one of a number of things, including the people, the environment, the community, and all that sort of stuff. And lots of companies signed up for it. There's very little evidence that many of them have actually done anything about it. They're still basically.
To bring it back to Tiffany's question, I mean, what would actually incentivize them to move on to this business roundtable, to move on to this broader stakeholder view? Would anything incentivize them?
I think that's a big sort of systemic change. I mean, I'd love to see it, but I'm not. I would suggest stop voting for the current incumbents would probably help. But
no, we can't vote out our CEOs. If only we could, right?
You say that. I mean, that's this is the whole one of the things that got me into this area was really looking at other ways of organising. And there's lots of other organizing structures out there apart from the conventional command and control hierarchy, and most of them are better. I mean, and there are lots of democratic structures where people do vote for their manager, and do vote for how the way that the organization works is a collective discussion and decided that way, and people are therefore engaged, and that that is the psychologically safe environment that people need to be in to be able to make a full contribution. And this is what this is all really about, is enabling people to fulfill their possibilities and live a meaningful life. At the bottom of this, it's about, we're not on this planet just to be worker ants. We're on this planet as souls to express ourselves.
No, but I was going to ask you, do you think it's possible? Like, I think Jeff was taking umbrage of me saying that it wasn't possible, but I was like, really? This is like an even more systemic change than changing corporations to the business roundtable, right?
But the business roundtable, although it hasn't, although it was to some degree, as I said, it was a bit of a PR stunt, really.
No, but what I mean is it possible to kind of change work to be decrapify all of work, to make work fulfilling, really kind of meaningful, able to help you? Is that even doable? Well,
it's possible. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. And my point is, what we've seen is a decline in the work experience over the past, I would say 40 years. And we need to reverse that, and we can start to reverse that, and we can do that at all sorts of, obviously we can't change the fact that most companies are still really driven by the share price and the profits that they achieve. I don't have the power to do that, but I can make changes in how I interact with people, in the organizations that I engage and support, in the views that I espouse. So the Business Roundtable announcement, although it hasn't actually resulted in such, was the result of pressure of people saying this shareholder primacy stuff is bullshit. We don't want this anymore. And those companies felt they needed to do something, because if they continue on the current path, they're not going to be able to recruit the people they want, because the values of the people coming in are different, and they won't buy that stuff anymore. So, we can. What I'm really advocating is that we all have some agency, and we can use that agency to start to go down this path. So it operates both at a personal level. So you can decrapify work, just as we touched upon earlier, just by looking at, like, what's my attitudes here? How am I framing this stuff? So you were framing all those emails as, well, you could, with a bit of work, frame them in a different. Sometimes they are going to be draining and tedious, but you can, it's simple things, just like, when I go to work, rather than being like beaten down and miserable and moaning, I'm actually just going to be pleasant to people, and I'm going to open doors for people, and that you can start to behave in ways that uplift your spirit and uplift the spirit of people around you.
Well, I think Tiffany has a similar point. She says, in order to manifest something different from the loss of crap work and harsh organizational KPI and OKR, in her opinion, is to dream up of something different together, instead of talking in circles about what's contributing to decline, to focus on what we can do. So firstly, like what you said, the first thing we can do is to change our own attitudes, our own mindsets about work, instead of going to think that work is terrible. But what else do you think we can do? Yuri pointed out a few things a bit earlier. First, that we can get money many ways. Work is just one of it, right? If we didn't have to work for money, and then what other possibilities can we think of? Also, things like rethinking what is the definition of work. So those are some of the things that, so far we've discussed. But are there other things that, you think can be done? Let's go from, bigger to smaller. Is there anything that we can do as organizations? If let's say I lead an organization and I would like to do something different, is there anything I can do?
Yeah, there's loads you can do. So, in terms of running an organisation, I think a big part of this is actually moving power and accountability down to the people who do the job. I believe that's the best way forward for organisations, not just to decrapify work, but to actually be more agile and responsive and more resilient in the future, and that's so that the organisation will thrive because the people will thrive. But yeah, the short answer is I haven't talked about pirates yet, but we need to be more pirate. Pirates were I talk about the golden age of pirates. They were in a society where they had no rights, they had no power. They were you literally didn't have rights because you were just a subject, and you were brutally treated in the workplace on a ship. And they decided to break out of that and set up their own society with their own values and ways of going about things, and they were incredibly effective. Obviously, yes, they were a bit robbing people.
No, but I had the same exact discussion with Jeff, right? He was talking about how these pirates got together and they could vote their captains out. And if their captains were doing a good job, they can just toss them toss them into the sea and elect a new one, right? And I guess my point really is this, right? That it seems to take quite an amount of willingness to subvert, to break all, norms of social convention that keep people together in order to even do this. Why is it that pirates could do it when nobody else could? Not nobody else. Nobody else that we know of could do it. Why not the military? Why not the Navy? Why the pirates? Because I actually think that it takes a lot. It takes somebody who is willing to go out there and basically subvert, social convention or social jail, and that's not easy.
It was more the point that they had a very clear set of principles. So they believed in democracy, and they believed in equal say, equal reward, looking after each other. So they had if you got injured on a pirate ship, you got looked after by your fellow members. So they believed in a much more equal society and a collective approach. And so they came together around those principles. The big thing about the pirates was the crew. But they didn't do it on their own. And I think if you're trying to make change happen, if you're trying to decrapify work in the environment you're in, you've got to find your fellow pirates. You've got to find the other members of the crew, so that you can act together and look after each other and support each other. And just dare to say, how can this be different? That's what the pirates did. The pirates said, well, this is really crap. How can this be different? How could we live our lives differently? What would we want as our sort of guiding principles and behaviours? And that's what they put in their pirate codes. So they didn't. They would vote the captain off, but they wouldn't throw him overboard unless they found something.
They don't throw him overboard. Oh darn!
No.
I have all these visions of them making the captain walk the plank.
No. So, but if they, for example, if the captain took more than his fair share of the spoils, then it would be in the pirate world. He has to be abandoned on a desert island with with some food and a pistol. Which always sounds quite harsh, but actually quite often they'd get picked up by the next ship that came past. So.
Oops. Okay.
So,
is that your alarm for having to go off this call now?
No.
Okay. I guess we've talked about like kind of people and how they need to change their mindset and then get together with other people who are, equally piratical and maybe get together and do this as a movement. Now let's think of what if I'm a leader. Let's say I'm a lone leader in charge of, let's say, a small business unit, and I'm reporting to people above. I have people that I lead, obviously. Is there anything that I can do to kind of decrapify work for my own people, even if I can't kind of control everything that the organization does? What can I do to make life better for my people?
Well, I'd go and ask them first of all. I mean, you have to create a safe space for people to have conversations first of all. So you've got to develop the trust and the relationships to enable that, and that's not going to happen overnight. But I mean, you should be engaging with your people all the time and asking them what they need, and trying to make sure that they have that in place, and encourage them to ask the question, like what could be different. Because quite often people, those are the conversations that happen down the pub that nobody ever hears about further up the organisation. There's probably loads of really good ideas in there about what could be done better, and what could not be done. I mean, like literally stop doing stuff. So quite a lot of things that drive people up the wall are things that don't need to be done. Unnecessary meetings, pointless reports that nobody ever reads, email chains that should be.
I'm like shocked. Give up on meetings and reports. What would the manager do with his life? Like, he'll be so bored.
Well, they won't, because then they'll have more time to talk to their people. I mean, this is about a manager changing their role from being fundamentally supervisory, which is this is all tied back to the old idea of the factory, and the organisation is a machine, and that actually an office is just a factory for desks, and so you have to watch over people and check that they're doing their work and stuff. Well, you're employing intelligent. We've got the most intelligent workforce we've ever had today. Most well educated.
Really? Are you sure we have the most intelligent? I'm not even sure we have the most intelligent humans. I mean, have you seen the recent COVID and all the debates around COVID? I shan't go into it, but I mean,
there's always been a fair selection of idiots. I mean, somebody pointed out, in the First World War, when London was being bombed and there were threats of gas attacks and stuff like that, everybody had to carry around the gas mask, and there were people who complained about the gas mask and people who complained about having to black out the windows. So they really wanted to keep their windows open and show the Germans where to drop their bombs. I mean, it's just there's always insane people out there. Part of life's rich tapestry, really. But I mean, generally speaking, it is a fact that the people coming into the workplace today are better educated than they've ever been. And we employ people to do knowledge work. We employ them to use these brains that they've trained. So why would you want to micromanage them and supervise them? What you should be doing is coaching them and encouraging them.
I mean, Tiffany was saying that you should be changing from a purely supervisory role to a much more advocating stance. Yeah. So I actually would like Tiffany, if you can hear us, tell us what you mean by a much more advocating stance. Like what are you advocating for? Right. So let us know, Tiffany.
Well, I'd say you've got to advocate for the people that work for you. I mean, if being in charge of a team of people, it's a privilege, and you have an opportunity to make those people, I'd say better human beings, I suppose, but to enable them to
I don't know. I mean, that sounds really arrogant. Like, would I want to work for a manager that tries to make me a better human being? Well, he's not my mom, I already have one mom to do that for me, right? Try to make me a better human being.
To give you the opportunity to grow and develop and to realise your potential. That's what I meant. That's why I did hesitate before I said it, because it wasn't quite the right phrase. But that's I always saw that as my role as a manager, was to make these people, essentially able to make their own path forward without my role. I mean, that's Mary Parker Follett, who says that the the role of the leader is to make more leaders.
Well, I don't know. I mean, here's what she said, which is the coach, mentor, advocate for the needs of the staff.
Yeah.
Which I think is the same thing that you're kind of saying, right?
Yeah, and that involves spending, rather than spending time checking what people do, it's spending time talking to them and finding out what they're doing and what their needs are, and where you can help and assist them to do the job better. Because in too many organisations, the premise is that people come into work and they're lazy and they don't want to do the work, and they're quite happy doing something sort of half-assed, and that's not what people are like at all. People want to go into work and they want to do something well, and they want to feel that they've achieved something and they're satisfied with what they've done at the end of the day. People are fundamentally good. That's
a difference of opinion with many managers. I can't even count the number of times managers have told me that, if I keep an eye on these people, if not, they'll rob the company blind, or some iteration of that. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I think we are coming to the top of the hour. I know you do have something after this, so let's just kind of repeat a couple of things, right? So for organizations, if you lead an organizations, I think you were talking about devolving authority downstream, putting the power down to the people who are actually doing the work, the operational, handing the power down. For people who lead teams, really, that's what Tiffany has said, to coach, to mentor, to advocate for your people, to try and ask them, create a safe space where you can ask them what they want, so that we can come to an idea of what to want. If you are alone, if you are, a single contributor in your organization, then you can look at two things. One, which is changing your mindset, first of all. And then secondly, changing your mindset, meaning that don't think that work must be crap. Work can be not crap. And then going out to look for other people who buy this idea to kind of gang together and try and effect some change. So beyond this, is there anything else you want to give as an advice for what to do to decrapify work?
Yeah, just on that point about the individual, I don't want to get. It can sound a bit glib about just changing your mindset, but if you're going to work and it's not a totally pleasant experience, then you can either get depressed about it, or you can create some separation and decide that you're going to have a positive impact, even if the environment that you're in is a little bit toxic. So that's really what I mean. As I said, it's things just like being courteous to people, and showing a bit of care for others, and taking an interest in others, even if they don't initially give it back, because you're just going to feel a better person for doing that, and that's going to start to make a difference.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Colin, today for sharing with us. One last comment from Tiffany. There's a lot to do as a manager. Goes back to the saying of swimming upstream, right? Helping to innovate this idea of future of work. And she would argue that the future of work doesn't yet exist. And that ties to, what you said about decrapifying work. Well, if you define the future of work as nice, non-crappy work, what is the opposite of crappy? Nice, meaningful, purposeful work that fulfills and brings you joy.
The future of work it can't exist because it's the future, but work is always developing and changing. And I think what we've seen with the pandemic and people being, working from home and that whole office routine being broken, is that there are other ways of doing things. All that we were told you can't possibly have people working from home. They won't, they're lazy and they won't do it. It can't work. And then within 2 weeks, everybody was working at home, and actually they turned out to be more productive. And actually they could be trusted. And in the intervening 18 months, we found other ways of doing things. So stuff that, I'm sure a lot of stuff was quite clunky to begin with, but people have got better at it, and people have found other tools to use, and sufficiently advanced thinking organisations, it's like, well, why would we want to go back to where we were before? That we've found better ways of doing things, and that's the tip of the iceberg. What we're seeing are approaches that some of the best organisations have had for a while now being adopted into the mainstream, and that's the whole point is there are lots of workplaces that are not crap. There are some really great workplaces. There are some really good progressive organisations that do all this stuff, and that people do feel safe and fulfilled and supported, and they feel they belong, and they feel they have meaning in their work. And we need many, many more of those. We need those approaches to be migrated into the mainstream, and get rid of the crap.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thank you. And today, we've had a wonderful discussion, and I really appreciate you coming by to join me today. And for the next sort of like Thursday, Friday, we'll also be doing a summary post. And on Saturday, we're having a clubhouse session. So for those of you who want to come and join me, come and join me for those. And next week on Thursday, we will be up. Yes. Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks for joining us. And next week on Thursday, I will be joined by Lindsay, who will be talking about biases and about how we will never be able to see eye to eye with everyone, because there's just so much bias that's driving us, and there's this human innate, need to be different. Well, okay, so obviously she's arguing for the we can get rid of biases and we can overcome, and I'm arguing for the no, we are crappy human beings and we'll never get rid of our bias. I'm always arguing for the crappy humans. Yes. So that's what we're going to do next week on a Thursday. And so if you have kind of time, come by and join me again. Right. So thank you so much, Colin. Thank you. And thank you to all of you who joined me today. Thank you. See ya.